Hello and good afternoon. Welcome to this network discussion of the Ontario Network of CAPC and CPNP projects. Today you are joining us for a discussion on the topic of offering programming to Low German speaking families during the pandemic. My name is Sydney Bell and I'm the network lead. And of course, my computer has started to say it's having network connectivity. That's just the way it goes, right? So everybody cross their fingers that things go well. Lily, I think I will also give you co-host abilities, just in case I do get booted off. I'll do that once I finish this little introductory piece.
Okay.
So before I hand things over to Lily, I would just like to take a moment to offer a land acknowledgement. Our network is quite large in scope, covering the whole province of Ontario, and we do like to take a moment to acknowledge and give thanks to the First Peoples of the territories where we have the opportunity to work and serve with families all over the province. And I myself come from the traditional home of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples. And I'm sure there are people here from a variety of different territories. With that, again, I would like to hand things over to Lily Hiebert Rempel, who is going to be our host for our discussion this afternoon. And she will introduce herself and also our guest panelists, Netti and Frank. So Lily, anything else from me? And well, I'll be here. I'll just go off camera.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sydney, and I appreciate your support throughout this session. So my name is Lily Hiebert Rempel. I serve with Mennonite Central Committee Ontario as the Low German liaison worker. And I have enjoyed working with in this role now for almost 13 years. And through this role, I've gotten to know so many of you doing great work around the province. So let me then ask Frank, would you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Frank O'Connor. I am the Program Director of the Norfolk Community Health Centre in Langton, Ontario. I've been in that role for about, wow, it's shocking to say that, 7 years. And I have enjoyed it immensely and work with 3 other people in our office who are frontline folks, work with people regularly every day, and work with about 4 others who are in our Moms and Tots program who work with us from October through to April.
Great, thank you. And Netti?
Lily. Yes, my name is Netti Wall. I am the program manager of the Family Education and Support Project Aylmer. So that is under the Mennonite Community Services in Aylmer. I have been in this role 9 years, well, assistant manager for 3 and 6 years as manager now. And so there's been a lot of learning in those years. And some of what we'll be sharing today is just the things that we have learned over the years that we've been in our role.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much. Very thankful that the 2 of you were willing to take time out of your very busy schedule to share some of the information that you have learned during this COVID time. So let's dig right into this, and just so that we have a context, would you give us just a snapshot of what your programming was like before COVID hit? And Frank, would you begin again?
Sure, thanks, Lily. Depending on the year that I've been involved with this, We have somewhere between 15 and 20, maybe sometimes a little bit more than 20, maybe sometimes a little bit less than 15 moms and their children who come to our program. The program, as I mentioned earlier, starts in October and ends at the end of March, beginning of April. Our classes run on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 10 until 2. The moms and their children come to us in October, and we find that the numbers come slowly, and then as it moves towards Christmas, they really build. And then after Christmas, we tend to lose some of those numbers because some of them have gone to various Latin American countries to visit with family members. There's 3 stages of learning in our program. There's an initial stage where moms can learn the English language. If they don't know anything much about speaking the language, they can go to that first stage. The second stage is a stage where you can take what you've learned in the first stage and move it forward, usually at a considerable pace. And then the third stage is if there are some moms who are interested in getting their high school credits, perhaps towards a high school diploma. One is not, there's no hierarchy there to any of those classes. They just come in and work at their own pace and could stay at one stage for a long period of time, or perhaps be finished and get their high school diploma. So just to give an example of that, we had a mom who came to us and she was with our program for 12 years through having children and learning the language. And then in the last number of those years, she worked towards her high school diploma. So an enormously long period of time and great dedication on her part. And then we had a mom who just recently graduated and she was with the program 2 years. So it just depends on what level they come in at. There is a hot lunch served every day, and there's 2 stages of childcare. There's a nursery and a preschool or school readiness. Every day, one mom used to bring treats for a coffee break. And that was always something that they looked forward to, not only having the time together to share, but the treats that were brought in. Usually on the last class before Christmas, we would have a holiday celebration of some sort, which involved singing. And as I said to you, I came 7 years ago. I didn't develop this program. I came 7 years ago, and it's just been an honor to be a part of something like this that helps women to feel empowered, to educate them, to see them realize some more of their potential and do some things that they perhaps hadn't thought of. And just so we're clear, there's a great deal of diversity in our group. There's some who are just new to Ontario, to the country, to the province, and don't speak English well at all. And they might be, if you were to look at them, you might see them as more conservative in their dress, conservative in perhaps their beliefs. I'm not sure of all of them. And then there's another part of the group that is fairly progressive, and they would be more in the high school range. If you were to look at them, you wouldn't necessarily notice the difference. However, before I say anything else, I just want to say that I don't teach in this program. I used to often help out with childcare, but I haven't this year. But so I've gotten the feedback from all of the people involved with the program. So what you're hearing is an amalgam of all of their thoughts over the last little while about how our program did. Our program ran for 5 weeks before Christmas. And then unfortunately, we couldn't regroup again in January because of lockdown regulations. And just wanted you to be aware of the sort of taste of the group and what it's all about.
Thanks, Frank. That's very, very helpful. And Nettie, how about your program in Aylmer? What was your programming like before COVID?
In some ways, very similar to what Frank shared, but there are some differences. A lot of the moms that come to us are fairly new to Canada, predominantly Low German speaking, but we do usually have a few that come from other cultures as well, but are learning English as a second language. So we work with women and children under, 6 years and under. And so we offered 2 programs for our CAPC. So again, we do a winter program like Frank's. We start in October and usually end at the end of March or April. One group of women would come 3 days a week, so they committed to coming Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then we had another group that would come on Fridays only. So they could choose depending on what worked for their personal lives. And so again, it was an opportunity to learn English, to learn about the Canadian culture, and to integrate into the communities. And for the children, it's an opportunity to also just prepare for school and some of the things that they will encounter when they leave the day-to-day being at home with mom and enter the world of learning formally. And so we could sometimes register up to 28 women for our programs, and the children would be roughly the same numbers, and that would vary a little bit depending on the needs. Our baby room seems to fill up very quickly. We do also offer a CPNP program, which is a year-round program, so that is for expecting moms, and that one is it's been part of our program for quite a number of years as well. We have a worker who works specifically with our expecting moms. She will provide support through personal home visits. She will do group teaching sessions. And we used to be able to do, well, the group teaching sessions twice a month. She will also attend births. So she's there to support, to interpret. And then for anyone registered in either of those programs, we offer a family support position, which is a person who can drive them to appointments and can do some interpreting at those appointments, just to ensure that there's accuracy in being able to communicate with the medical professionals. So I think that sums up the majority of what we do.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that great overview. So now, as a result of COVID, you made the decision fairly early on that you needed to provide in-person services. So to be able to do that, what types of modifications did you make for the programming?
In our program, back in March, we shut down 2 weeks early. We were not able to complete our last year. And then throughout the summer, we had moderate contact with a lot of the ladies that were part of our winter program. This is for CAPC. We don't normally have a lot of contact with them during the summer months. And then in the fall, we decided that basically the only real options we had were to return to in-person if at all possible. So we did a lot of studying on what the regulations were. We looked at what was possible. We made a lot of modifications. For one, our group changed so that rather than 4 days a week, we only had 3 days, but we only had women coming 1 day a week. So instead of having up to 28 moms attending, we would have about 10 or 11 moms and often only about 10 children between the two programs that were coming. So very limited numbers. We would do some pre-screening each day. So every day before the moms came, we would contact everyone, check with them how they were doing, check to make sure everyone was healthy, reminding them that if anything changed in the hours between our phone call and the start of the program the next day, that please let us know and do not come to the program if there's any symptoms. So, you know, we changed how we did our snack. We used to do a lunch and a snack. We switched to just having a snack, reducing our hours per day. All of the cleaning that needed to happen. So all of our staff were involved in daily cleaning of the facility so that it would be ready for the next day when the next group came in. And yeah, basically had to rethink the entire program because there was so much that would be, you know, could potentially allow for an outbreak. So
Right.
We just went back to the basics and really looked at what we could do in the situation given the restrictions that were in place, but really felt that we needed to offer something in person if at all possible.
Great. Okay. Thank you. And Frank, what modifications did you need to make?
Sure. I'm just going to offer two perspectives on that. The first would be that we offered the program for 5 weeks in advance of Christmas shutdown. And I'll speak about that first, but then afterwards, we thought that there was a possibility for us to offer something in January, not unlike what libraries do in terms of a curbside pickup or door pickup or whatever you want to call it. So I'm just going to talk about both of those right now. First of all, everything that Netti said with regards to the screening and some of those restrictions, as you would find everywhere, we put them in place for sure. But otherwise, our services remain the same in the classes, except for we offered a lunch every day, and we offered it as a hot lunch. And we were so nervous. And to be clear, I did, in the lead up to this, I was very grateful to be able to talk to someone like Netti who was doing something similar, because when you take that risk, especially in light of something that is so, there's no template for this, it was very difficult for us to say, well, for sure this won't happen. That wasn't true. So often I would check in with Netti and see what they were doing, or she might have checked in with me the odd time. Truly, it was more me checking in with Netti for sure. But what we came up with was we would offer the same services. We would offer the lunch. We would ensure that masks were on at all times. In the end, what we found was that our numbers diminished considerably, but we were prepared for that because we thought, at least we're offering the program. At least if they don't want to come, we totally respect that, but we're offering something that they could buy into if they so wished. And so what we did was for lunch, if you can imagine this, just like your lineup at a grocery store when you're waiting for the checkout, a shopping cart distance apart is 6 feet. As you wait to go in to get your lunch, the lunch is dispensed from a small window. It's a plated item, you just get it. There is designated seating. There are no more than 2 people at an 8-foot table, and you can't move the chairs. Your mask must be on until you sit down, and it must be on when you get back up again. So several things like that changed. But in our classes, things, I mean, just as you can imagine in an elementary school or high school, the desks were far apart. We were able to offer distance. Unfortunately, because the numbers were so small, we were able to do that rather easily. I'll talk a little bit later about the implications of that with regards to the spirit in the class, but it did work out, we thought, fairly well. It put a lot of pressure on the teachers and on the person who was the cook, because they had to do all sorts of wiping down on a regular basis before, during, after, and our cook, she had a helper up until this year, if you can believe it. But when I spoke to her the other day, she said, I'm glad I didn't have a helper. I know where I've been in every part of the kitchen, and I know what needs to be wiped down. So she said, though it was way more work and sometimes lunch was later, I'm grateful for the fact that it was just me that I had to depend on ensuring that everything was clean. In the end, as I mentioned before, no treats, no Christmas celebration. And now, since we couldn't gather again in January, we have offered what you would perhaps look at as a curbside pickup. So we're really encouraging the moms to come in and pick up work that they can work on with themselves and with their children at home. And some of our teachers, 2 of them in particular, have used WhatsApp a lot in encouraging the moms to take a piece. So for instance, in the women who are just learning English, take a piece, read it, and then send that on. And then the person, the teacher, can offer some comment on that. So it's just been a bit of an electronic lifeline to keep moms engaged, to make them feel like as though they've still got a connection, even though it's not physical, we're not present to them. And we've even gone so far as to offer them to offset some of their mileage for coming in to pick up their work. So just helps a little bit to keep a lifeline with them, so that hopefully, as of 4 o'clock today, maybe we'll hear that the schools will open and we can open back up soon and perhaps have things back on track.
Okay. Frank, I'm wondering whether you could say a little bit about what has the uptake been like to this modified curbside pickup idea.
Sure, I can give you almost exact numbers. Again, not like we had before, not the 20 and 25 people, but the numbers have dropped off a lot this year. So we've run it on 3 Tuesdays, and I guess that would be the the 12th, the 19th, and the 26th. Is that right? Yes. Yes. Okay. And so in offering it on those 3 days, we got 8, 10 moms out the first day, 5 from one class, 3 from another, 2 from another. On the second Tuesday that we ran it, it was 6. And this past Tuesday, it was 4 moms who came. So nothing and not huge numbers, but just enough to throw out something that they were gravitating towards.
Yeah, maintaining that relationships with the moms, I think, is very, very crucial. And so many of the moms don't have any other opportunities to connect with previous programming and stuff. So it's kind of neat that you offer that, and that some of the women were able to take advantage of that. That's great.
And I have to say, Lily, in as much as so many of us over the past year have learned to use Zoom and other ways to gather together like we are today, we are learning to use WhatsApp in a way which is constructive, and maybe that's something that will support our learning in the months and years to come. Who knows?
Yeah, that's certainly an application that I still really need to learn how to use as well. And Nettie, how about for you?
Well, since the lockdown, the second one,
yeah,
we have also had to change. So obviously no in-person programming at this point. And so it became a question of what can we do under the current restrictions. And so we also switched to doing more of family kits where some of our staff will prepare activities for the children. We'll put that together into a package, and staff either distribute to some places, or some of the families are able to do a pickup. And so we've done a variety of things. Our staff are continuing to explore various options. This week they're looking at creating a snakes and ladders game that they're able to create, like to put it together and to distribute to each of the families so that the children have something they can enjoy playing. We're looking for something that doesn't clutter up their homes, but that is something that children can play without too much need for mom to be involved, because we know that's often difficult for mom to spend a lot of time, especially if there are children at home that are needing help with schoolwork and those types of things. Other things that we have done, our teacher has been doing 1-hour Zoom classes. So we send out a Zoom link to all of our ladies, and there are a few ladies who are consistently joining on the Zoom class. We know that's much more challenging because of a host of issues around the whole use of technology and data and Wi-Fi, all of those things. But there are a few ladies that are taking advantage of that and seem to really be enjoying that weekly connection with their teacher, and some with each other as well. I think what's maybe had the biggest response is our teacher before, like when they were in person, would always do an idiom. She would explain an idiom each day in the classes, and just, it's one of those cultural teachings. And so she has started doing that as a little video, and she'll record herself, she'll explain the idiom, and then we will send that out on WhatsApp to all of the students once a week. And the ladies are absolutely loving it. That's been something that's just a little connection point back to what they did before the shutdown, and they are just really responding well to that one little, like it's 2 minutes, but they're loving point of connection.
Yeah, neat. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, so you've already talked about the changes that you did make in your programming, and you've also mentioned some of the challenges that you have worked with. Are there any other challenges that you would like to cover during this time that you didn't cover before?
I would just like to say a lot of programs have been able to switch to online, so they're able to use Facebook, they're able to use Zoom fairly successfully. And I admit I'm a little bit envious of a lot of those programs because we are not finding that we're able to use those as much. A lot of our ladies indicate that they have very small data packages. Most do not have Wi-Fi or internet in their home. And so it's very limited what we're able to do. So if we're not able to do in-person, phone calls are the biggest means of connecting with them, or a WhatsApp conversation, but it's very difficult to have any real connection when it's just through WhatsApp or a phone call. We find that it's very limited for our programs right now.
I would also add that there are a couple of challenges I'll outline, but I'll say right off that it was really important to us that we tried to do something to create this program to make it work. And that wasn't just for learning, it was for well-being. And that was something that we really depended upon the people who work there, the teachers, the childcare folks, and those who are offering preschool, school readiness. That was really important for them. And we really depended on their generosity of their time. I met with them before and talked about how we're taking a risk. We're putting ourselves out there. And much like the teachers in the classroom at schools across the province, we don't know where all this is going to go. Though they had several weeks as a head start on us in the schools, and we thought, okay, we had some comfort there. We weren't sure, and we certainly didn't know with our children as to how that was all going to go. So we really depended on the generosity of so many people who worked for and with us. And that was certainly the case in our office as well, that people were very good. When our office was shut down, if you can believe it, people would actually come to other people's homes and say, I know your office is shut down, but I wanted to get some help with this or that.
Yeah.
And so my coworkers were very good about, we live in a small area, which has its enormous number of advantages, a rural area, but it also has its disadvantages because people know where you live.
Yeah.
And there was a generosity there. So I can't help but highlight the fact that the people that I work with are very generous. As I've mentioned to you before, there was enormous pressure on the teachers and those who work with children and our kitchen staff to ensure that everything was sterilized. We were using a church, and we wanted to make sure that we weren't doing anything untoward at that facility. The mask, having a mask on all day in class presents its challenges as well, because especially in the learning of English, where lips and movement of lips is so important, there's challenges there with both giving and receiving instruction. And yeah, that certainly made it difficult. And perhaps, as I've mentioned before, because the classes were so small, sometimes a few moms in each class, that made it difficult to make the energy roll every day. It put a lot of pressure on the teachers to do that. So those were certainly some of the challenges.
So Frank, I have a question for you. The women knew beforehand that they would have to wear a mask when they would be at the program. And did some women say, well, I can't come then? Do you think that had a, or?
For sure, it had an impact. Not for the ones who came, but if you can imagine this, some of our high school programming folks, so some of the moms who come and can pick up work and take it away, they would in the past have stayed to get some facilitation. from the person who was in charge or what they would consider to be the teacher. But I wonder if I could quote one of the teachers who gave me some information about this yesterday. She said, some of the ladies would only attend once in a while because they were very much against wearing masks and would only stop in for help and then leave. There was definitely resistance to mask. All of the ladies who came wore them, but would find reasons to take them off. This is in that one class that I was referring to, perhaps the more progressive group, but would find a reason to take them off from time to time, sipping on water or other exceptions. And so she said there were challenges often that were there, but they were always very respectful of the rules. We couldn't operate this if we didn't have everyone wear masks. So when they were there, they wore the masks. And I don't mean to make it sound like that, but they did as they were told, but they did as we were instructed to ask them. And so they were very respectful of that.
Great, thank you. Nettie, do you have anything to add about challenges or about the receptivity of these changes?
When we called our ladies in the fall to discuss returning to in-person classes, and we mentioned the need to wear a mask, there were some that declined to come this year. Our numbers were certainly lower than what we would reach in a typical year. And I do believe some of that was just due to the uncertainty, due to perhaps the need to wear masks, those types of things. I think some just found it easier to say, we'll wait until things return to normal and then we'll return to classes again. So definitely, we did not have the numbers in our program this year that we have had until now. And yet I was very impressed with our ladies. Anytime there were any children with symptoms that we would question, they were really good about indicating that. They were good about staying home. They were very conscientious that it would take the entire group working together to allow the program to run. And so some of the moms would indicate, I don't want to be the reason that there's an outbreak and this program is shut down, so I will stay home instead. And while they were, missing the fact that they couldn't be in class connecting with others, I was very happy with the way that they took that responsibility and realized that their choices impacted the rest of the people in the program and the program itself.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you so much for your sharing. And I'm just wondering whether our participants, Sydney, have any of the participants raised any questions?
Hi, Lily. No, I don't see any questions yet. So again, just invite if anybody does have a question or comment, feel free to put it in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering about the children. In many places, children don't need to wear masks. What was your practice at the program? Frank, maybe do you want to begin?
Sure. We followed the school board recommendations on almost everything. I mean, in previous years, we would just tell our moms if the school board closed the schools, our program would be closed. And we found it way easier to just echo what other school boards did because it was just easier. So as a result, all of our children were under the age of going to school, so they did not have to wear masks. However, that presented its own subset of problems because the people who work in the nursery, it was a little bit more manageable. Children only up to between 1.5 years and 2. But in the preschool school readiness, that was way more of a challenge because the children did not wear masks. So trying to keep them separate, and again, a blessing is the fact that the numbers were so small. So, but trying to ensure that this was a dedicated space for one and not for another. And then of course there's a we took away all the dolls and things like that that they might have gone to in the past, or stuffed toys, and they were given a bag of crayons or things to write with, and that was their bag. They got that bag back every day, but any sort of common area, tables, chairs, would all have to be cleaned with great regularity, and by that I mean several times over the course of a day, to ensure that there was things were kept as clean as possible. So it certainly put a lot of pressure on the people who were offering that supervision, because they are dealing with things that they had never dealt with before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anything to add, Nettie?
Well, I was just thinking that our staff were rather creative with some of those things, because they wanted children to be able to have Play-Doh. And so what they did was to have a bag with a small amount of Play-Doh, and each one was labeled for each child. So each child had their own piece of Play-Doh, and that was all that they would be allowed to handle. And so I think it worked fairly well. One of our staff went so far as to craft a little sleeve that fit over the back of the chairs, and they had pockets in there. And so there were things like crayons, glue, all the things that the children would normally be using in the day-to-day activities. And so each child had their own set. And that way we were able to sort of keep it separated, so that there wasn't a lot of back and forth sharing. And it was great. So every day at the end of the day, they would simply pack up that sleeve and keep that until the next time that particular child was in the program. And it did cut down on some of that need to clean, because how do you clean crayons and you know, all of those types of things. So we did have to take away things like our rice table, so some of the sensory items that the children love to play with. But we kept as much as we thought we could possibly keep clean and sanitary on a regular basis. But otherwise, I would have to echo what Frank said about a lot of vigilance in terms of cleaning the high contact surfaces on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. So did you need to hire more staff to help with the cleaning during the program?
For our part, because we reduced the number of the children as much as we did per program, we were able to manage with the staff that we had. And so we made sure to check in with them at the beginning, especially to see, did they find it manageable, or was there a need for more? And it seemed like they were handling things fairly well. But again, that was because we reduced our numbers to probably about a third of what they were normally managing in the classroom.
Okay, great. Thank you. All righty. Well, thanks so much. And I think now, we can maybe open up the discussion for everyone to participate. Is or maybe before we do that, is maybe for Nettie and Frank, for both of you to respond to what is your perception of what the program participants understood about COVID? Maybe Frank, would you like to begin?
Sure. Sometimes I'm not sure what I understand about COVID, so I should probably put that out there right off the bat. I listen to the news with great regularity, and from last March until now, I think I have some understanding of its severity, and I have some idea of where we're going, but I'm still not sure. And I think to a certain extent, there's a real dichotomy amongst the folks who come to our program as well. Many of them don't listen to news 24/7 like I do. And I'm not so sure that they're any more or less informed than I am. And I think sometimes if you just follow the instructions of stay at home, and as so many people did that, I think it's just a really simple equation there. But then I know sometimes churches enter into it. So for instance, in one class, one day, we had two moms. One mom goes to one church where they wear masks. And this is quite some time ago, now before Christmas. when they could gather in smaller numbers. And another mom goes to a church where they didn't wear masks. And so they're being fed different things from different places. But what I find amazing about them is the resiliency of the culture, in that, okay, if I go to shop, I do this. If I go to Moms and Tots, the learning program, I do this. And if I go to church, I can do this. And I think maybe that's what all of us do as well. So I'm not quite sure what to say about their understanding of COVID. I met a group of people who were very good about saying that they'll do whatever it is that we ask of them. And I'm grateful for that. And to a certain extent, some of our teachers got some insights, but I don't know that I could speak to their understanding of COVID or how deep it might go.
Yeah. Okay. Nettie, do you want to add something?
I know that in our area, the Low German Radio has worked very hard to try to provide some of that education and information to the Low German community. Southwestern Public Health has worked with the Low German radio station on quite a few different pieces of information to be sent out. So I'm hoping that they have received a fair bit of information through that message. And yet, I think it's very real that there's a lot of other information being sent around within the Low German community, often via WhatsApp, and it may counter what they're hearing from these official messages. And I think it's left many of them very, very confused. Often there is a distrust of official messages. The medical community is not always trusted. And so it leaves them in a place of not knowing what to believe or whom to trust. I know we've seen some of our participants who have become very frenzied about a certain item. And as we talk to them, we're able to help them sort of sort through some of the things that they've heard and try to help them reach a decision that makes more sense, because they can very easily just feel overwhelmed with the conflicting information. And especially given that many do not have any scientific backgrounds, there's a lot of the science that does not make sense to them. And so how do you distinguish between truth and someone's perception of a situation when you just really don't understand a lot of the background information that decisions are based on? Mm-hmm. So that's what we're seeing more of. And it's hard to know how at times to respond to some of the participants, because we see that they're struggling with all of the things that are coming at them and just not really having the ability to make a solid decision on any of it. And so that's where I really feel for some of our participants, because they just seem to struggle with not knowing exactly what to believe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Lily, I wonder if I could just offer an insight which came from one of our teachers, represented probably by at least a couple of students from her class, and it just provides an insight as to where they're at. So I'll just use a quote for something that she had sent me. She said, "Most do not believe in COVID." This is one woman from one of the classes speaking, and I believe there were a couple of nods around the table. They feel that the government is just trying to scare them, and they're just trying to figure out who will comply and who won't. Some expressed that this was a sign of end times and that all are against the vaccine. And then the teacher speaking now said, "It sure made learning challenging because it took a lot of effort to stay focused on the work because of all these other concerns." And just to summarize that or follow up with that, she also commented that we need to wear a mask because we're at school, and in order for the school to be open. They do not trust the news, the government, the COVID numbers, or the science. And then sometimes they refer to COVID as the flu. It may seem that they are stubborn and defiant, but the truth is they're scared and they're very nervous that the vaccine will become more prevalent, and they're not sure what to do at that point. and they're worried about their husband and worried about their families. And I thought, though that's probably something not all of us will agree with, I appreciated the honesty of that mom saying that to the teacher, because it offered an insight as to where some of them are at.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think another confusing thing is the fact that most have family back in Mexico or places like Bolivia, and it's being handled very, very differently in a lot of those areas. And so when you come from one country to the next, so Ontario right now, lots of restrictions, but if they go to Mexico, they don't need to wear the mask. They don't need to follow a lot of the protocols that we're following here. And so that just contributes to that confusion. And I think it's hard for them to understand why there's so much difference in how countries are responding to it.
Yeah, yeah. In the last Mennonitische Post, like the newspaper that is printed in Steinbach, and it's for the Low German speaking people in Latin America and also in Canada. Kenneth Giesbrecht had a very nice graph there of the number of deaths that have occurred during this last year, and it's significantly higher than it was in previous years. And certainly the death rate here in Canada is also, you know, slightly higher as well, but we've also been taking a lot more precautions, and we as a country also have a lot more resources than Mexico and Bolivia have. And yeah, so we definitely, yeah, it's also hard to make those comparisons, right, between what's happening there and what's happening here. You know, it's different, certainly at the ground level, and to get the accurate statistics may really take a while. Alrighty, so I'm wondering whether we just need a little bit of a stretch break, and let's stretch a little bit, and then let's move on. I think our next portion is where we all have an opportunity as service providers, as educators, to talk and share. And I'm wondering, as far as maybe if we could be broken into two groups, and we'll continue the discussion in each of these groups. So the question is, how do we as service providers navigate all the changes that we need to make when during this pandemic time, and maybe because of literacy, because of language, because of maybe limited access to information and also to programs, how can we deliver good information to this population so that they can make good decisions? So thank you, Sydney, for putting those questions on the chat. And before we get split up into two groups, I'm wondering if each group could decide on someone who could maybe take some notes, so these notes then could be shared with all of us later. And maybe one spokesperson from each group could maybe make a summary. And if you could make those decisions fairly quickly in your group, Okay, so let's break into two groups and continue our discussion as a round robin as to how we as service providers have navigated the changes when we're working with the Low German people.
Sounds good, Lily. So we have until 3:30 today, right?
Right.
So we'll give this, do you want maybe 15 minutes and
Sure.
then 15 minutes back for,
Yes.
okay, that
Yeah.
sounds good.
Thank
And
you.
I see Caitlin has put a question in the chat that we could just remember to maybe check in about when we get back.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and once I put you into groups, I'll maybe send the questions as a message if you didn't have a chance to jot them down. So here we go. It'll just take me a moment. So continue to have your little stretch break here. Okay, where's my, okay, so we're 2 breakout rooms. Okay, you should have a little pop-up there. And we'll see you in 15 minutes.
And maybe state your name and maybe one challenge that you as a service provider
I just wanted to let the group know my internet is spotty, so there's been a lot of people freezing, so I'm not sure how much I'll be able to contribute either, so sorry.
If it's better for you to go off camera, we could certainly understand that.
I will try doing that just to make sure I can hear. Thanks.
Okay. Sydney, you were going to...
Yeah, I just want to check in and see if this group has a volunteer, just to be willing to share some of the highlights of the discussion back to the larger group. Is there somebody who can do that?
Yeah, I think I volunteered, Sydney.
Oh.
Sorry, I crashed the meeting, so I figured I have to redeem myself.
All right, that is your punishment, Tina. Yeah. Thank you very much. And you have a good sense of the questions, or shall I put them in the chat here again, just to make sure you have them? I'll do that.
That would be great, thanks.
So the first question, how do we as service providers navigate these challenges? I'm not sure how many of you work with the Low German speaking communities, but anyone have some thoughts on that one? What have you done? What's working? What's not?
Sure, I can talk, Nettie.
Hi, Sarah.
So hi. I'm Sarah Moffat, public health nurse on the school team at Southwestern Public Health. And so we've been doing strictly COVID now since just before school started. We had to go
Welcome back. I think you're muted, Lily. And I just want to let folks know that we have started recording again. The small group gatherings weren't recorded, but we'll start recording again. So
okay.
I'll hand it over to you, Lily.
Okay, thanks, Sydney. So in our group, we had Ellen, that's going to be doing a summary of what we learned during and who is a spokesperson for the other group.
It's Tina.
Tina.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, great. Okay, so Ellen, would you like to begin?
Sure. So in our group, we really just got to kind of talking a little bit about what some of the challenges are. I think it was interesting. We have very similar challenges trying to reach a group of people that are tricky to reach, and everybody's using their own way to do it. So we have people using Zoom, people using WhatsApp, people using Google Meets, sending hard copies of schoolwork home to families that just Wi-Fi isn't really working out for them, or there's a competition for the Wi-Fi in the home. So everybody's doing as much as they can, but we know we're all still missing people for whatever reason. Maybe it's the lack of technology, or maybe it's the misinformation in the community. So we're all missing them in some way. That's what I took away from our challenges, but we're all doing an amazing job trying different things and keep going, and you never stop trying to reach them.
Right, yes. Okay, thanks. And Tina, do you want to give us a summary of what your group talked about?
Yes, we heard from a couple of public health nurses, which was really great because we spoke about the difficulty, and this is from a school perspective, of getting the message out and a consistent message for both the private schools as well as the public schools. So they both have to adhere to the same protocols, but within the private schools, they don't have the resources that the public schools do. So it was very difficult to follow those protocols. Also, as we heard earlier on, internet-based learning doesn't work. So that was also a very big challenge within the private schools. So they had to find creative ways around these barriers. One thing that's come out that is sounds like a great initiative as well is that there has been an internal group started with about, at the beginning, 5 different public health units, and it's grown a little bit. And they're trying to figure out the best way of communication and reaching populations. So that looks really promising. There was a lot. I couldn't get it all. So I'm going to try to look through my notes and see to try and do justice to the conversation. As Ellen said, one way of communication is through emails, and WhatsApp has been a little bit more used, but also there has been misinformation with WhatsApp as well. So that's concerning. And that is one of the battles, is how to mitigate the information that's being presented in WhatsApp when some of it is not accurate, but a lot of people have access to it. Let's see. So another thing, and again, sorry, there is a lot here, and I know I'm not going to do justice to it. Another thing that's been a success is that sending emails doesn't always work for this population. So what one particular health unit did is they were able to record messages about COVID in Low German and send the audio file to the families. Mm-hmm. So that seems like a very good, promising practice as well. And just as well, some of the difficulties of messaging and how they may work for many populations, but it is very difficult to tell a mom, for example, with 10 children, that she would have to isolate. So again, some of these things are just not realistic with within the Low German community as well. Okay, I think one other thing in terms of the vaccination is, and this is another public health unit, has said that they really have seen a spectrum of whether or not families want the vaccination. She has seen some that say, you know, when is this going to be rolled out? When are we getting it? While others, there's still a lot of fear and a sense of not knowing how to navigate all the information that's out there. So there is, again, a spectrum and in between as well.
Great.
So I'm going to stop there and invite anybody else from the group to present or to cover information that I may have missed. Oh, sorry, can I add one more thing, Lily?
Sure. Yeah.
Just because I flipped my page and I noticed there were notes on the other side of the page.
Yeah.
So one thing that has been working well is that vitamins, other resources, grocery cards are being sent out by mail. So that's working as well. And in a couple of cases, there have been meetings in grocery store parking lots as a way to reach families as well, who may not be getting the information via email, as well as texting. So that seems to work for those who are not getting email.
Okay, great.
So that's
okay. Thank you, Tina.
You're welcome.
And also thank you, Ellen. So just during the thank you all for your participation today and also in these conversations. What we are also wondering about is whether there would be a need to gather again, you know, maybe in terms of the vaccine, or are there other needs that you perceive during the next couple of weeks or months that we need to gather again, or could gather again, to do maybe some problem solving or some deeper discussion?
So we have a little poll created. Lily, would you like me to
Yes,
run
please.
that? People
Yes,
can...
please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, you should see that there. It's an anonymous poll. Right, getting close. Just need a few more responses. Okay, I think almost everybody has voted, so that's great. One more second here. Well, it looks like here, I'll share the results. There, you should be able to see the results.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
So 65% or 11 said yes, and 35% or 6 said maybe, and nobody said no.
No. Okay, yeah.
So I think that is concluding, unless, are there any final thoughts, Lily, that you have, or Netti or Frank, before we sign off?
One of the comments that we made before everyone joined us is the fact that we only speak for our own experiences. We certainly don't speak for the Low German community as a whole, and we certainly don't speak for other programs that are also working with the same population. And there's a lot of diversity in those programs. So all we could speak to was the experiences that we have and the programs that we have been offering. So I'm hoping that nobody sees this as, you know, the only answers that there are.
Yeah.
But what we were sharing is just what we have experienced specifically in the last year or so.
Yeah, yeah.
Important to remember. Thank you, Netti.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
You know, and
thank you, Netti, for saying that, and I completely agree with that. And I hope that I haven't said anything that's representative of anything
right.
other than the folks at our program. The other thing is, part of me is waiting with bated breath to see what's going to happen at 4 o'clock today, because as I've said a couple of times, the program ends in March. So we'd love to see if we could get the program up and running again, perhaps as soon as February the 11th, if it were possible. If not, we'll wait till the following week.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Yeah, and I also want to say a real special thank you to each one of you for reaching out with the Low German population in the ways that you have, and that you've really used creativity and determination and motivation to really provide some services, you know, during this very, very challenging time. And so I just want to wish you well and hope that this pandemic will soon be done, and that we can go back to meeting together in person. But thank you very, very much for the work that you are doing with the moms, the students, the children, the adults. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'd like to echo that, and thank you all for coming. I did post our little short post-event survey in the chat. If you do have a moment to fill that out, that's always helpful to us in the network for our planning, because we want to make sure what we offer is meaningful to you. And I want to again thank Frank and Netti for carving out time in their busy schedules and being willing to kind of put themselves out there and providing a focal point for these important discussions. It's really really great that you were willing to do that, and I sure appreciate that. And finally, thank you, Lily, for reaching out and sparking things, as you're so great at that. Sort of recognizing where there's a need and looking for opportunities to bring people together. So thanks so much, Lily, for leading us through this conversation. And so I think that ends our time together. We will have a recording of this discussion that I'll share in the newsletter, maybe this week, maybe next week. And it looks like there might be some interest in a follow-up. So I'll connect with Netti and we'll talk about that. I guess if you, watch for a further announcement.
Yeah, great. And thank you, Sydney. Thank you, Sydney, so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Okay.
Okay. Have a good rest of the day, everybody. Stay safe. Stay well.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye. Take care.
Bye-bye.